I'll take this much. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Apparently.
Oh, what?
Never out of stock.
Sorry for being gone for months on end. I just got busy with things. So ever since I was little, I loved zombies. I dress up as them, watch zombie movies on DVD or Netflix. I snuck over to a neighbor's house to play Nazi zombies. They even became the muse to a lot of my doodles throughout my school years. I fell in love with The Walking Dead show. I played Telltale Games The Walking Dead. The Last of Us was a part of my childhood. So on and so on. Needless to say, they're a favorite of mine. They never felt played out to me. However, I can't say the same for others. I decided as a show of love for these ugly undead bastards I'd make a video on their history. Also spoilers for the following. First things to get into, where they come from. While there are many forms of undead, draw, ghouls, vampires, politicians, we're focusing on zombies, who come from Africa, specifically the Congo, and even more specifically the Congolese Africans who were sold to Haitian slavers. The slaves believed in these things called zombies, which, to put it simply and most likely fuck up the definition, were people without souls, and souls without bodies. Their idea of creating a former type of zombie involved a chemical concoction which was believed to kill a man and raise him. In reality, it was more of a date rape drug, allegedly using blowfish skin and datura flowers, which makes me wonder how you got someone to unwittingly take this shit. Datura is bitter as hell. Anyways, the mixture would knock the victim out, and wake them up later, as someone more open to suggestions, and generally a bit slower. Why did the Congolese do all this? The answer is slave labor. What can I say? Africa loves slavery, and the best slaves are the ones who don't have free will. The African slaves in Haiti kept the tradition of zombie making in memory, and after slavery was abolished in 1793 it was probably still practiced from time to time. Only one possible to confirm case to my knowledge. A bit over a century later, a guy called William Seabrook wrote a book on Haiti, mentioning the Haitian Sigma grind set, and a little while later a dude in Hollywood picked up the idea and made a movie with it in 1932, called White Zombie.
Why did you drive like that, you fool? We might have been killed.
Worse than that, monsieur. We might have been caught.
Caught? By whom? Those men you spoke to?
They are not men, monsieur. They are dead bodies.
Dead?
Yes, monsieur. Zombies. The living dead.
In 1932, the movie White Zombie was released, starring Bela Lugosi. The film was about a plantation owner who falls in love with a woman soon to be married. In his love quest, the plantation man turns to his associate, Master Murder Legendre, in order to get her.
That is the way. The cost is heavy. You give me what I want, and you may ask anything. No. Not that.
So the voodoo man gives him a Mickey to slip her. At the wedding, the sim puts it on a rose and gives it to her. Lugosi does his voodoo. and it appears that she dies on the spot. She is later taken to a cemetery to be buried in a few days, but is snatched by Lugosi and his zombies. Meanwhile, her fiancé, a guy called Neil, is flustered about her supposed death, but with the help of a Mr. Not Van Helsing, Dr. Brunner, they saddle up to find and defeat the murderer.
Your driver believed he saw dead men walking. He didn't. What he saw was men alive in everything but this and this. The law of Haiti acknowledges the possibility of being buried alive. Here it is in the penal code. I'll read it for you. It's in French. Do you speak French?
No. Beaumont. Say, you said that you couldn't understand why he was so interested in us. Do you think he did this?
No. No, I think it's native work. Native work, exactly. Of course, if you want to, we can go to Beaumont's house first. If I can get my hands on the devil that's responsible for this, I'll make him such an example that every witch doctor in Haiti will be shaken in his sandals. I got friends among the natives. They'll tell me things that no gendarme could ever get out of. Because I'm a preacher, they think I'm a magician. Before we get through with this thing, we may uncover sins that even the devil would be ashamed of. Oh, these witch doctors.
Back in the murderer's castle, the simp is upset that his zombie girl is effectively brain dead. He goes to complain to Mr. Murder, telling him to bring her back, and he agrees to, and then hands him some totally not spiked wine.
For the future, monsieur.
Betrayal.
Dr. Brunner and Neil find Lugosi's castle. Neil pulls the blicky on the zombies to no avail. Fortunately, he is saved by a halfway zombified simp, who kamikazes Lugosi off a cliff. The female regains sentience, and it's a happily ever after. It was the first thing to really bring zombies to the world, because no one really cared about voodoo outside of the people who practiced it. Personally, I would recommend it. For the time, it tried some pretty out there things, shots that I imagine would have been hell to accomplish when working with actual film tape. The plot isn't shit, and it's got some good acting to it. It was really low budget, only 50 grand, which is about $1 million today, but it has real quality to it. It inspired a few replicas, movies that used the zombie concept, a few shaking up the formula. But one day, in 1968, a game changer was released. And it was released by a man named George A. Romero.
We were out here. It was from right over there. I jumped out at you from behind the tree, and Grandpa got all excited, and he shook his fist at me, and he said, "Boys, you'll be damned to hell." Remember that? Right over there. Well, you used to really be scared here.
Johnny.
You're still afraid.
Stop it now, I mean it.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
This is a movie everyone familiar with zombies knows about, and a verified classic, but for those who don't know, here's the plot of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. The movie opens with a lady named Barbara and her brother Johnny going to a graveyard to put a wreath on their dad's grave. While they're talking, they're accosted by G-Man from Half-Life. G-Man attacks Barbara because he hates women, and Johnny comes in to save her. Unfortunately for him, G-Man is an experienced wrestler and fucking breaks Johnny's neck on a rock.
Gordon Freeman in the flesh.
Barbara runs for her life as G-Man pursues her, and locks herself in a car with no key to no avail. G-Man breaks the window with a rock and reaches for her. Barbara, however, has a stroke of genius and takes the car out of park. She glides it out of there, but takes her eyes off the road and crashes the car. She gets out and runs, finding an abandoned farmhouse. Seeing a body inside, she runs out only to be greeted by the best character in the movie. Ben comes in and sets down some defenses, lays out the situation, and tries to knock some sense into Barbara.
Don't you understand? My brother is alone!
Your brother is dead.
No! My brother is not dead! Oh. Oh.
Without further interruption, let's celebrate and suck some dick.
A while later, she wakes up and sits about, thinking of her brother while the radio talks about how the dead are eaten. Over and over, to a slightly absurd degree. Ben goes about cleaning the place up, finding supplies, cutting back to Barbara. As she gets her 9th reminder that there won't be an open casket for Johnny, the door to a previously locked cellar opens. Out comes two men, causing Barb to yell. Ben comes to the rescue and then grills them for not helping.
Don't shoot! We're from town. A radio.
How long you guys been down there? I could use some help up here.
That's the cellar. It's the safest place.
You mean you didn't hear the racket we were making up here?
How were we supposed to know what was going on? Could have been those things for all we knew.
That girl was screaming. Sure, you must know what a girl screaming sounds like. Those things don't make any noise. Anybody would know somebody ever needed help.
Look, it's kind of hard to hear what's going on from down there. We thought we could hear screams, but for all we knew, that could have meant those things were in the house afterward.
And you wouldn't come up and help?
Well, if there were more. The racket sounded like the place was being ripped apart. How were we supposed to know what was going on?
Now, wait a minute. You just got finished saying you couldn't hear from down there. Now you say it sounded like the place was being ripped apart. It would be nice if you get your story straight, man.
His wife and kids downstairs. Kids hurt.
They converse, discuss plans, and more zombies appear from the darkness. Ben wants to hold the house. Cooper wants to hold the cellar. They bicker. Afterwards, everyone goes about their business. Cooper checks on his injured daughter. Barbara does nothing, and Ben gets grabbed. The group discovers that the house isn't impregnable. Afterwards, they argue some more about what to do. Ben roasts Cooper. Todd calls up his hoe duty, and Cooper retreats to the cellar. Down there, he talks with his wife, discussing what to do. She challenges him on his behavior, saying he's endangering them.
Whatever it isn't just happening here. It's some kind of mass murder. It's going on everywhere. The radio said to stay inside.
Radio?
Radio upstairs. I heard a news bulletin.
There's a radio upstairs and you boarded us in down here?
I know what I'm doing.
What did it say?
Nothing. They don't know anything yet. There's mass murder everywhere, and people are supposed to look for a safe place to hide.
Take the boards off that door.
We are staying down here, Helen.
Harry, that radio is at least some kind of communication. If the authorities know what's happening, well, they'll send people for us to tell us what to do. How are we going to know what's going on if we lock ourselves in this dungeon? We may not enjoy living together, but dying together isn't going to solve anything.
His wife makes him go up with her, and they check the TV to see what's happening. It's worldwide, and rather unknown. If the group wants to live, they'll need a plan to survive until help comes, even meaning they may need to GTFO. So the men decide to get the truck, and try for a gas pump. Then Todd and Todd's hoe go to get some gas. Todd fumbles the hose near an open fire, causing him and his hoe to accidentally ascend to Jano. then hauls us back to the house, and the dead follow him. The group talk. Cooper's wife tells the group that her daughter was bitten, and no one pays it much mind. Then the dead come knocking. They bang down the barricades. Cooper tries to kill Ben, but gets shot for his trouble, causing him to head downstairs to see his daughter one last time. Cooper's wife gets grabbed, but Barbara frees her, causing her to run into the cellar. She's greeted by her daughter eating her husband's body. Understandably, she freaks out and gets stabbed to death. Barbara gets to see her brother again, right before the horde rips her to shreds. Ben escapes to the basement, and is greeted with the corpses of the not-so-restful Cooper family. Cutting a few days later, a rescue group sweeps through, capping undead. Ben hears it, and goes up, gun drawn. The party sees a shuffling silhouette in the house, and take a shot. Ben then falls to the floor, dead, thought to have been a ghoul. He is burned with the rest of the undead. To say Romero influenced the genre would be the understatement of the century. Motherfucker changed how the whole world perceived them, and funnily enough, the movie that started it all didn't even refer to the monsters as zombies. In the 1968 Night of the Living Dead, they were called ghouls. They were also afraid of fire and could use tools. These ghouls were however labeled zombies by others, and it stuck. The Romero zombie would become the basis for all zombies in media, though for a while afterwards, zombies would still be voodoo or magic-based, a notable example being Zombie 1979. This movie, folks, would highly recommend. Romero would release Dawn of the Dead in 1978. It follows a group who use a mall as a base after their helicopter runs low on fuel. I'm not gonna delve too deep into the plot because that's getting kind of exhausting, but I will recommend it. After the 70s, the voodoo aspect seems to have completely disappeared, now being replaced by vague magics. Skipping through the 80s for brevity, 1985 saw the release of Return of the Living Dead, a horror comedy featuring one of the most iconic zombies ever made, Tarman. It's a part of the slim but kino genre of punk movies. It's great, but be prepared for a downer ending. 1985 also saw the release of one of my all-time favorites, Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead is so fucking good that I refuse to divulge the plot. Please pick it up and watch it. It's the third movie in Romero's of the Dead series, and it expands on ideas from the previous movies in such a great way. In the same year, the Reanimator franchise debuted, acting as an adaptation to the H.P. Lovecraft story of the same name. It's a cheesy movie, but it's good cheese. Queso cheese. 1987 saw The Evil Dead 2, a movie more well-known than the original, which I skipped over. While not having standard zombies, I still believe I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. However, it should have doubled down on the rape trees. 1988 saw a sequel to Return of the Living Dead. The following year saw a video game company called Capcom release a title called Sweet Home, based on the movie called Sweet Home. Put a pin in that, it will be important later. The following year Pet Sematary released, adding to the list of film adaptations that Stephen King didn't lead. 1990 saw the release of Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead. It's pretty similar, except Cooper and Ben shoot each other. Ben shoots the daughter, and Barbara is a cute tomboy with initiative. I actually picked this up at a thrift store thinking it was the OG. It was pretty enjoyable outside of some blatantly stupid scenes. 1991 saw Night of the Day of the Dawn of the Bride of the Return of the Terror. It was just the original Night of the Living Dead abridged. I haven't seen it, but I really want to. 1991 also gave us Brain Dead, a trauma movie that features the most based way to handle a zombie horde. 1998 saw the release of the Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island movie, which scared the shit out of me when I was little. 2000 and 2001 didn't see anything notable in terms of zombie movies. However, the next year, 2002 saw the release of two notable movies, one of which we will get to later, and the other being the very kino, highly praised, and genre-shaping, 28 Days Later.
My parents and my sisters, we went to Paddington Station, hoping maybe we could get on a plane, maybe we could buy our way onto a plane. I remember my dad had all this cash, even though cash was completely useless. About 20,000 other people had the same idea. The crowd was surging. I lost my grip on my sister's hand. I remember the ground was soft. I looked down and I was standing on all these people. Like a carpet. People who had fallen, and somewhere in the crowd they were infected. It spread fast. No one could run. All you could do was climb. Climb over more people, so I did that. I climbed. And I got up on top of this kiosk. Looking down, you couldn't tell which faces were infected and which weren't. And I saw my dad. Not my mum or my sister. My dad. His face.
"28 Days Later" was made by Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. It starred Cillian Murphy, Naomi Harris, and Christopher Eccleston. These actors were unknown at the time, and were picked because of that reason, since audiences would see them as a character instead of the actor. Getting into the film, it opens with monkeys getting the Clockwork Orange treatment, being forced to watch the evils of humanity while getting infused with modified Ebola. Environmental activists break in and kidnap a scientist, demanding him to tell them what's going on. After telling them that the obviously agitated monkeys are filled with contagious rage, the environmentalists decide to free them, resulting in the deaths of everyone in the room.
Keep your mouth shut and don't move a fucking muscle.
The chimps are infected.
Infected with what?
In order to cure, you must first understand.
Infected with what?
Rage. Rage.
Get the cages open!
No!
People criticize this scene for being dumb, but I could 100% see this actually happen, since environmentalists would actually do something this mind-numbingly retarded. We fast forward 28 days later and see our main guy, Jim, a naked man in a hospital bed, completely unaware of what's been going on in Britain. He leaves his room to an empty and messy hospital. No one in sight. It's vacant of life. The phones don't work, and Jim's words echo off the walls. He leaves the hospital to a dead parking lot. He moves through the street and comes to a bridge completely empty. No cars, no people, nothing. He heads deeper into the city, only finding litter and overturned vehicles everywhere. Memorials, banks, streets, no one. Eventually he gets a small picture of what happened. Papers speaking of evacuations, walls and walls of missing persons. Something happened to cause the country to exodus, and he got left behind. Jim wanders his way into a church. It's dark and unsettling. He walks to the chapel and sees a sea of bodies, unmoving in the window-lit pews. He faintly asks, "Hello," and a few of the bodies jolt up to meet his gaze. And then the preacher comes.
Father.
Jim is sent running for his life as the infected follow in hot pursuit. Luckily for him, he is saved by the stalkers, with a penchant for fire and bombs. They take him to their mall safe house for questioning and dad jokes.
Man walks into a bar with a giraffe. They just get pissed. The giraffe falls over. The man goes to leave, and barman says, "Oi, you can't leave that lion there." He says, "Not a lion. It's a giraffe."
Here we learn Jim was a courier who got hit by a car before it all went down. He's understandably freaked out. They exchange names, introducing us to Mark and Selena. Mark and Selena tell him how the world collapsed while he was out, villages rioting, evacuations, and the army getting defeated. Pretty much the only good news is that the government is gone, and so are taxes. However, this doesn't make Jim feel any better. Instead, he wants to find his parents. After a good night's sleep, they go to Jim's parents' house, and they find his parents. They committed suicide, holding a picture of him. It's a hard-hitting scene, and it leads to Mark opening up about his own loss. They decide to stay at the house for the night. Jim is restless, however, and wants to think of better times. He lights a candle and looks for home videos, and the candle helps him find them, and helps the infected outside find him. They burst in and pin Jim, waking Selena and Mark. They save him, but Mark got injured. Not taking chances, Selena savagely takes care of him.
Wait.
Jim changes his clothes, and they leave. As they head to find shelter, Selena tells Jim her survival-based view of the world, with a coat of nihilism on top. They eventually spot a signal light at their new destination. When they arrive, Jim and Selena have a pretty cute scene in a stairwell that gets interrupted by infected. They haul us up the stairwell and are greeted by a friendly Panzer soldat. He lets them into the apartment block and fights the infected. Unfortunately, they're confronted by a lobotomite, who won't let them into her shelter until she hears the Panzer give her the okay. They get in, and the Panzer soldat introduces himself as Frank. Frank also introduces his daughter Hannah, the brainlet from before. Jim shaves, cuts his hair, and during my first viewing, I didn't recognize that this was Jim for a few scenes. The next day, Jim and Frank are on the roof. Frank explains that there hasn't been rain for 10 days, and they don't have much left to drink. Needing a place to go, they hear of an army base on the radio. After some arguing and a bit of bad acting from Hannah, they agree to leave as a group. After a shit idea, a shopping trip, and a self-defense situation, our group may camp at some old ruins, and Selena opens up to Jim, saying her time with Frank and Hannah has changed her view. Later, when the group is sleeping, Jim has a nightmare that everyone left without him. Frank wakes him and lets him know it was a dream, to which a sleepy Jim says,
"You're having a bad dream, that's all."
Thanks, Dad.
They go on with their journey, see a burning Manchester and ride towards it. They finally made it to the place from the radio. It's a blockade, an abandoned blockade. Cars and bodies. Frank is pissed, and as a cawing bird gets on his nerves, a drop of bad blood gets in his eye. He turns within the minute as his daughter watches. Before Jim can do anything, Frank is shredded by gunfire. The military arrives, and from all directions, oddly enough, the group are escorted to a mansion in the forest, and greeted by Major Henry West. Selena is distraught for Hannah, and Jim can't comfort her. Next day, Major West gives Jim a tour of the place. The scene is unsettling, almost feeling like a sales pitch. And then Mailer gets introduced.
And lastly, meet Mailer. Mailer, Jim.
Mailer's introduction pulls the curtain back on West, as he reveals why Mailer wasn't put down.
The idea was to learn something about infection. Have him teach me.
That night, they celebrate the new arrivals with a feast. It's a tense feast as the soldiers have a back and forth on the state of humanity started by a Sergeant Farrell. Before it can go any further, infected try to storm the building. The soldiers drop dinner and go to their defenses, gunning down the infected as they come, something that some of them seem to be enjoying too much. As they go inside, one of them harasses Selena, causing a fight to break out. Jim and West break off to discuss whether Jim's group should stay. West asks him what he had to do to survive, and then West reveals what he had to do.
We fight off the infected or we wait until they starve to death, and then what? I moved us from the blockade, I set the radio broadcasting, and I promised them women.
He promised his men women so they would continue fighting to survive. In short, the reason the military showed up after Frank was doomed, the reason they broadcasted in the first place, is because they planned to take women from survivor groups and rape them to ensure humanity continues. Jim runs to get the women but is intercepted by a manic Sergeant Farrell. They're both captured and are taken to a killing field. But due to their incompetency, Jim is able to escape over a wall surrounding the mansion grounds. And during a moment of rest, he spots a plane in the sky, a sign of life and civilization outside of Britain, a way out for him and the girls. Back at the mansion, Hannah and Selena are dragged off and forced to change for the soldiers. During a brief moment of privacy, Selena makes Hannah take pills so she won't be all there when the inevitable happens, but then, an alarm is sounded. It's Jim. And he's pissed. Major West and Franklin Clinton ride down to check out the blockade. They separate, Franklin gets hit and run, and West retreats after infected are drawn in. Jim runs to the mansion, stopping by Mailer on the way. In the house, the girls are dressed, and Hannah is out of it, talking a lot of shit. And as the soldiers get tired of her shit, Mailer comes by to say hello. The girls run off. As Mailer hunts down soldiers, they're intercepted by the harasser and brought upstairs. Infected soldiers hunt down the real ones, joined by a pissed Jim. And shortly after Major West, Hannah gets lost, and Jim finds Selena being held by the harasser. They reunite, sharing a kiss. And then Hannah glasses Jim, very based. They run to the car only to be greeted by West, who shoots Jim. Hannah responds by literally fucking feeding West to Mailer. Holy fucking based. They all hop in the car and ram the gate. 28 days later, Jim awakes in bed in the countryside. Selena spins fabric, and Hannah lays it outside in the form of hello. A jet comes over, and our characters are safe at last. "28 Days Later" is a fantastic movie featuring a talented cast, and a personal favorite of mine. Personally, I think it's a great exploration of the nature of violence and the actions people take in survival situations. On the flip side, the other film that came out on the same year was a hunk of shit, and tied to something I alluded to a while back. As stated earlier, 1988 saw a sequel to Return of the Living Dead. The following year saw a video game company called Capcom release a title called Sweet Home, based on the movie called Sweet Home. This game featured our undead friends as one of the antagonists, and at the turn of the decade, reshaped the video game medium, as it inspired one of the biggest horror franchises ever.